This is about India against corruption. Now, I know a lot of people here, they haven't heard of it, so let me just give you a background. Now, last year, there was a huge movement which basically said that people asked for an anti-corruption legislation, a strict anti-corruption legislation, which finally happened towards August last year because of a huge movement. So just to give you an idea of the scale, this is just one of the thousands of events that happen all over the country. This is Anna Hazare.
ये हम लोग तो नहीं गए उनके घर में बताने के लिए, उन्होंने वो सब काम किया है। तो बड़ा मुझे अफसोस है कि किसी ने जो बदतमीजी की आगे के लिए वो नहीं करना चाहिए।
Now, how did this happen? Today, I'd like to talk about what happened, what the marketing pundits believe how it happened, what the insiders believe how it happened, and basically, please help me to figure out what actually happened. So first, I'd just like to talk about this saintly person, Anna Hazare, the person, this charismatic leader who really led this whole thing and inspired a whole nation to be able to go through this and to be able to do for this fight. So I'd just like to get a glimpse of Anna Hazare over here before we start. 74-year-old man, he has no possessions, zero possessions. All he owns is a set of utensils and a bed, and he sleeps in a temple. Now, this man has already been honored by the government for his work in community service, in making his village self-reliant. So he needs absolutely nothing. And all he says is, the only thing he says is good thoughts, good deeds. He doesn't even talk about corruption very often. Now, how did this movement happen starting from here? And that's what I'd like to talk about. Okay, so firstly, the background is that there is massive corruption in the country, and people are angry. And the corruption is, well, there are huge scams being talked about of billions and billions and billions of dollars. In the parliament, as we speak, there are 160 people out of 540 who have serious criminal charges against them. These charges range from kidnapping, attempted murder, and murder. And it takes 20 years for the courts to decide on a case. So the whole ask of the movement is, get a strict anti-corruption legislation which will try a case within 2 years and with the consequences of severe punishment. So basically, the government, on hearing this and seeing the movement, they said, we'll form a panel, gives an eyewash solution, and Anna threatens an occupy. Leads to his arrest. He's freed, but refuses to move out of jail. And the support intensifies. And finally, he says, I'm fasting unto death, and the whole country goes into a frenzy, and finally the parliament relents and says, we'll accept your demands. Okay? Now, this is what the marketing pundits said. They said there was a brand ambassador, Anna. He test marketed this whole concept by first doing a small occupy in one part of the country. He offered people a consumer experience, you know, that whole event that you saw over there. He had the right tagline, India against corruption, with the right colors, reminding people about patriotism. They made the media plan, and this is actual stuff from an actual marketing analysis. And they packaged it right, and there were symbols, icons, and logos, and there were these merchandise like I am Anna. So the whole thing was, so when we showed it to the insiders, the people who actually ran the campaign, you know, short of, well, they said that they saw things very, very differently. So the way they saw it was that there is a huge amount of public anger. So it's coming from inside. This inside, and then there is the offer of a simple solution. Just go ahead and pass this law. And it's inspired by one man who's truly inspiring. He has lived his life with the value systems that he talks about. He's actually lived his life. You know, these same things that he talks about, good deeds, good thoughts, 1 million people have said it before. But when he says it, people realize that there is a certain power in what he's saying. He went on a fast for 13 days. 13 days without food, just a glass of water on his side. This fast was seen by hundreds of millions of people on television. And he did that for 13 days in a row. You try going on a fast for 13 hours and you'll find it difficult. We can't go without information for 13 seconds. And this man had the power to move the nation because of a sheer display of willpower. What willpower does it take? Where did he get that from? He got that from just looking at the people, from looking at all of us and saying, I want to help you. And even if I have to die for it, even I have to starve myself to death, I'll do it. I'll do it for you. And that moved everybody. That was where the movement's energy came from. Let's just look back at his life. A life of simplicity, something that we've lost altogether. A life of purity. He has no desires. Now, if that leads to willpower, everybody starts questioning the life that they lead. Okay, the other thing was that this whole campaign was unplanned and there was a huge amount of luck. I'll talk about that. So sorry about this. I know this is supposed to be an e-campaigning forum and a lot of strategy involved over here, but 90% of it was not planned and luck. So here's me. Now this is me. Here is 1.2 billion people. Now we live half our lives in giving bribes, some form or the other. You have to bribe to get a death certificate, birth certificate, driver's license, passport, water, ration, whatever. Don't quote me on this, sorry YouTube. But a lot of people have to bribe their way to expedite things. And then suddenly you hear of all these scams and a symbol of a devil emerges over there. That parliament symbolizes the devil. People need a symbol to be able to put their problems on. And this whole movement found that symbol. Now, I'm not saying that that symbol is the only cause for corruption in the country. But that became something for people to see and get angry about. Because just at that right timing, what was happening, that these billions of dollars of scams were coming up, such as that India is the #1 nation in terms of unaccounted for money lying in Swiss banks. Okay, now here come a group of people with a simple solution that has passed this bill, and they have no vested interest. So what happens is, this revolution gets inspired. And everybody starts identifying themselves with the oppressed, with the simple, with the good fighting against the evil. It was this goodness in people that came out, and it was this goodness that got shared. People started saying, I am Anna. What spiked the movement? Well, initially there was some social media which the journalists got onto. So they came to know who's where, what are they doing. And then there were some speeches which were covered by the media. There were appeals by these gurus, 2 gurus of yoga, of meditation, and they talked to their followers saying, please join the movement. So this was a great help to the movement. Now, once again, this is not a recipe for a movement. In that context, this worked. With these events, this worked. Social proof. When people saw a lot of people doing it, more and more people joined in, and the whole thing began to snowball. Platforms became available, yes. Many of these were encouraged by the key people behind this whole movement. So people could do any of these things. Reading, print media, watching was a huge pastime. This show on TV, just watching everything that was happening, was something that the whole country got involved in. And yes, for a change, the middle class was discussing with other people in the middle class about possible solutions and what should be happening. How was the database built up? There was this missed call campaign. So 80 million outgoing calls were sent out, spammed to people in general, which basically said that, look, join this movement by giving a missed call. Now remember, a missed call is free. So if somebody calls that number and nobody picks up the phone, it's an exchange. Nobody picks up the phone, you don't get charged for the call. But your number gets recorded in the database. Out of 80 million people, 20 million responded. Incidentally, there are over 600 million mobile phones in the country, mobile users, and somehow, the team only reached 80 million of those people. So it's not just the missed call thing, it was speeches which talked about this number. It was these gurus who inspired, call this number now. And that's how it happened. That's how the movement snowballed. So we millions could act within our personal resources. If somebody could only give a missed call, he made a missed call. If somebody could participate in an Occupy type of movement, he did that. If somebody walked all the way from Agra to Delhi to be able to participate in this movement, and this person happened to be a cripple, he did that. And the media picked these stories up, these human interest stories. And that's how this whole thing became a frenzy. There was a 3-year-old, she went on a fast. So people forwarded mails, they forwarded calls, and the TV ratings were historic. By historic, I mean it was more than 9/11, more than the Babri Masjid demolition. In fact, more than any other modern TV event except for the Mumbai terrorist attacks which were shown live on TV. And the government had this fear of the sheer number of supporters. So basically, what happens is that the fast enters the 13th day, by which time there were enough emergency sessions in the parliament, and the parliament finally relented and said, okay, we will go ahead and accept your demands. So all of us, we got egged on because of the feeling that we were winning and we were sharing and we had something in common with 600 million, 1.2 billion other people. It's our movement. I am Anna. Nobody else, no organization seemed to be behind this. There was no logo. There was no, in fact, India Against Corruption is not even a registered organization. There is no donate button anywhere in this whole picture. Never has anybody been asked for a single paisa. So here's a summary of what we believe happened. One, there was an offer of a simple solution. The second is the leaders were trustworthy. There was a deadline. And this is critical because people had to act. They had to act. The parliament had to act within that deadline. There was social proof. People felt they were winning. They felt it was their movement. We felt it was our movement. I need to act now. And that's how this movement happened. Thank you.